Hello. I wanted to just show everyone what I scored. As it were, at this year's New England Pen Show. Actually, it's called the Commonwealth Pen Show. Pen Show. I got this at last year's pen show. The ones I got this year I haven't quite fixed yet. But let me show you what they are so you can enjoy them with me. At the end of the show, someone handed me a bag of pens that were and said, you can have these. I thought, well, that's very sweet. Until I sort of looked at what they were. It was just sort of a bunch of junk. But in that bunch of junk were these matching, more or less. Which one matches? This one does not match. These match, more or less. Pen and pencil set. And it's a bulb filler. Pardon my inky fingers. But this is one of those novelty pens that told you had a gauge on it, like a gas gauge in a car, telling you how many drops of ink you had left. Evidently, it had 76 drops of ink, and the way at the bottom goes down, but it has 30 drops, and then it says to refill it. There are some versions of pens like this that tell you how many words you have to write. Now, I don't know how many letters they think are in a word, but a word gauge is pretty ridiculous. Anyway, it's a pen that no one really in the world other than me would like. And I would probably never write with it because it has a really crappy nib. But anyway, I think it was quite lovely. And whatever, I got it for free. Here's another item that I got more or less for free. Traded it for a sign I made. And it is a pencil, but it's a pencil with an app. And the app on this pencil it's a pencil for bridge players. So you see the little enamel suits of cards at the top here. So you would keep score with the pencil, of course, but for people who play bridge, sometimes you forget what trump is, so you would set the pencil down with the diamonds facing upward so that people would remember that diamonds are trump. Now, and then here's the extra leads for those serious bridge players. So is it diamonds are trump or diamonds is trump? Well, they're both correct. Suit of diamonds is trump. Diamonds, the cards that have diamonds on them, are trump. Anyway, so ta-da, 2 down. This, back to this one for a second. This clearly was used to a degree, but it was not used as much as this pen. This pen is one of the most well-used pens I've ever seen. The gold plating has almost completely been removed, and we're actually wearing down the metal. The metal is actually, the base metal is being worn down on this pen. An old Shafer. It looks like it's been through, well, the Hindenburg disaster, World War II, and Chernobyl. Anyway, I do have a collection of pens that have been used well and long by their previous owner, so I enjoy finding pens like that. Another pen of that ilk is this one. This was owned by Julius Saltz, has his name imprinted on it there, and it has been held in Julius's hand so strongly that the pen is warped to his grip, and this part of the pen plating has been completely worn away. And again, it's one of these pens that was loved dearly, or not so much loved, I don't know if that's the right term, but it's like wearing a sweater that you love and it has holes in it, but it's the most comfortable sweater you own. And this was Julius's pen, and there was no reason to buy a new one. He had this one and did whatever Julius did, wrote amazing letters, or I don't know, I'll have to find out what he did. But again, it's a beautiful example of a pen that was well loved. And the only person that loves this pen, other than Julius, is me. I'm pointing to myself, there is me. No pen collector would laugh at me if I said I like this pen. They would think I was a nut. Okay, and that's what you're thinking as well, I'm sure. I don't like Parker 61s particularly, but this one has a very distinctive sort of color from the 60s, and it has quite a wide nib, and for people there are many people in the world that love nibs like that, so maybe this will end up in someone else's hands at some point, but I thought it was quite lovely. And another 61, and I've never had one of these that have a first year, it's this little plaque or something, I don't know what it's called, but it's welded onto this thing, and it says first edition. And I don't know what kind of nib this has. These pens were pens that you would fill them by capillary action. You just set the whole pen barrel in the ink, and the ink would be soaked into this sort of sponge-like container. And of course, it didn't hold as much ink because the container part of it took up so much room. This one has a bulb filler, which they smartly improved at some point. Anyway, so these two 61s. And then another well-used Shafer, but it has a nice sort of pattern engraved on it that I thought was lovely. This one hasn't been completed. The parts have been removed, but it was just a nice little part. And the Moore Fingertip pen. This was Moore's version of the Parker 51, which is this pen. I also got this at the show. This has a very fine nib. I like fine nibs. So when Parker came out with this pen, many pen companies tried to copy them. And one of the pen companies that tried to copy them, this design of a hooded nib, something that looks like this rather than a standard nib, was the Moore Pen Company. And their attempt, which was probably one of the stupidest ones, was to come up with this one. This is called a fingertip pen, and it's pretty dumb. They never worked very well, but they're relatively rare pens, and I don't have one in this color. It's blue, as you can see, or maybe you can't see. Add more light here. Well, that doesn't help. It's blue. On that same vein, I got 3 other pens that have that 51-like look. This is a French pen, I believe, and it's sort of big and cigar-shaped lever filling pen, which is kind of rare late in the day like this. A Venus pen, also with a hooded nib. And something interesting about this is this section, which these are all friction fit. This section is octagonal rather, and it fits into an octagonal hole. And that was something that evidently this company felt was important, the Venus Pen Company. But again, I have a collection of imitations, the highest form of flattery, and in this case they're all imitating the Parker 51, and it was very difficult to improve. Well, it was impossible to improve on that design, and there are very few companies that did a good job of it. Here's another pen that has the hooded nib. This is called a Statesman pen. I don't know who made this, but I have an idea that it might be the Tower Pen Company. And lastly, and perhaps not leastly, lastly and mostly, is this dip pen. Now, and it's in a very simple holder, and the dip pen, I always look for dip pen nibs. This is from 1880 or so, 1890. And what I do with these pens is to take them out of this holder. If I were to write with this pen, as with any dip pen, you dip it in the ink, take it out of the ink, and you write your words. And you can maybe write a word before you have to dip it again. And how anything was ever written other than a limerick or a fortune cookie back in the olden days, I do not know. But what I do is I take this nib and I make what are called Franken pens. I find a barrel, a large size barrel fountain pen, and I place the dip pen nib in the pen that has a feed so that I'm able to write on one dip. I'm able to write an entire envelope. Mr. and Mrs. John Smith, 27 Western Avenue, Boston, Massachusetts, 02143. I can write that all with one dip. I'd have to dip this pen in order to write that same envelope. I'd probably have to dip this 20 times or more if I wanted to have it be shaded like that. Now this pen, and I never really know what this nib is going to be like when I actually put it into a holder, but it's very fine and just slightly flexible, so it may, and none of these pen nibs are the same. Every one is different from each other, so it's always a delight to see how they write. But this one might be really great for writing very, very small, tiny lettering on a small space, like a place card or a very small envelope. This might be great. So that's it. How much fun is that? You missed it, you dear viewers. You missed all of these exciting things at the New England or the Commonwealth Pen Show in Boston, Somerville, Massachusetts yesterday. But I got this stuff. And I sold some very nice pens as well to very deserving people. The pens I sell are, and I also purchased pens from myself. I'm always finding pens that I'm thinking I'm going to sell and I decide to keep them. So I'm my best customer. But I did sell some very good functional pens. They may not have been very nice looking, but I was able to sell perfectly functional pens with great nibs to artists and calligraphers and writers. I don't know whether any real collector bought a pen from me. Most of the pens I have for sale are perhaps too common for a collector because they already have one. But I sell pens with great nibs for as inexpensively as I can to people like me who will be using them to draw or to calligraph with or to write that novel. I did sell some pens to people that they refer to themselves as urban sketchers. There were 3 of them at least at the pen show, and they go around, they meet at cafes or restaurants or bars in Boston and in other cities, and they just sit and draw the urban life, other people at the bar or at the restaurant they're at, and they're really quite fun. I'd like to join one of their groups, but I'm very glad they came to the show, because I think pens that were made in 1920 to 1950 are great pens to draw with, and I'm glad they came. So that was it. Ta-da, ta-da.